Good evening, Houdat Nation, and happy Wednesday on a Friday to our Bayou Blitz family. Happy March 1st. Happy belated leap year day or leap day year, however that's supposed to go. Leap day. Happy extra February. I hope everybody took advantage of the extra day that you had in February. Because I've been under the weather, I most decidedly did not. But I am Bob Rose. I am your very weary host, one of your very weary hosts to your Bayou Blitz podcast. Joining me with some spectacular background, is my co-host and friend Brendan Boylan. Brendan, happy Wednesday on a Friday.
Yeah, we don't do that a whole lot. We usually do Wednesday on a Thursday, but Wednesday on a Friday this week because of illness, because flight delays, which are my absolute favorite. Yeah, the lighting's good. I don't know what I did different. I gotta take notes, make sure I do this again for next week. But yeah, no, it's busy time for the Saints, per usual. As we were jumping on, I joked that I thought it was going to be a quiet off season, but we all knew it was going to be a loud off season. A lot of moving parts, and that hasn't changed. Yeah, they've finalized the offensive coaching staff, but now, as you see at the bottom, cap cutting begins. I could have been a lot more ironic, I guess, with how I wanted to phrase that. But it's every year. It is escaping cap hell. The Saints are the bat out of hell. I don't know. Like I could have went a million different ways that way. But they've already done a fantastic job getting from where they were to where they are now. And we'll go over a lot of that throughout the evening. And I guess we'll start there with probably the latest news, unless my sleep deprived time zone changed self missed something else. But let's start with Marcus May, because if you guys, the normals, the regulars, our friends that tune in and week out, regardless of what day of the week we actually decide to go live on, you knew at the end of the season, or really about halfway through the season, Bob and I both felt that Marcus May was a guy who could be a cap casualty. And it wasn't so much Marcus's performance on the field. While he had some moments, he certainly had some other moments. But and what Kyle Mosley said this probably a bazillion times since you and I started working with him is the greatest ability is availability, right? And that was the thing for Marcus May. 16 games played, I believe, as a Saint, maybe 17. I had the joke last season that I didn't think he ever played back-to-back games. And I don't think we ever actually looked at him. So one of you in the chat, Jerry's the only one that I recognize that said hello. But Jerry, maybe if you want to look that up and let me know, did he actually play 2 straight games? He said, you guys are 2 days late. Would you mind sharing with us? Yeah, I got stuck in Milwaukee. Bob's been sick. I guess I'll share this just because I can. It's our show. We can talk about whatever we want. I landed in Milwaukee on a Tuesday, right? It was 68 degrees and sunny. And you're like, what's going on, Wisconsin? It's February. I wake up the next morning, leave my hotel room to go to a meeting, and I didn't open up the blinds in the morning. Really, I woke up, took a shower, got changed, ready to go, and it's -4 and there's snow on the ground. And you're like, what just happened? That is a 72-degree swing. Like, what happened? That was my experience, plus whatever goes wrong with airplanes. But that's why we're 2 days late. So we apologize. We don't do it a whole lot. Usually it's a day late if we need to adjust something. But
So if we're going to attach monikers, we can attach, TSA Nightmare Brendan Boylan to you, and because of that allergies and other illness, I sound like Heisenberg, for you Breaking Bad fans, TSA Nightmare Brendan Boylan and, Walter White, Heisenberg, Bob Rose, here to join you for your Friday Bayou Blitz.
You say Heisenberg. The first thing that comes to mind is our late friend Art Dumont. He would have loved if you had a Heisenberg hat with the hats that he wore. But I digress. Marcus May never really got rolling with New Orleans. A lot of it was injury. I mean, you had the DUI thing. Like, there was a lot of things that really prevented this from getting off the ground. Personally, I don't think he played poorly when he was on the field. The problem was he wasn't on the field,
Mhm.
and he was a big cap hit for a guy who was not on the field. Now, if I saw the numbers correctly, Bob, and you can double and triple check me on this, is if he is a post June 1 cut, they end up saving like $7 million
Mhm.
in the cap. Now, if they were to cut him right now, it would only save like 1 point something million dollars. So
Yeah.
he is going to be a post June 1st cut.
Yeah, that's correct. And there'll be some dead cap money to come along with it. But again, if they're going to designate him for a post June 1st cut, it's going to be a lesser cap hit for this year. That balloons a little bit to, I think, about 5 million of dead cap next year. But it's the right decision for them to make, both financially, and competitively. Safety, as we have both outlined a couple of times so far this offseason, really since midseason, the safety is an underrated need. It's one not getting talked about enough. But the team really likes the development of Jordan Howden. I would expect him to play a combination of deep safety and move him down into the box occasionally, as they like to do with Marcus May. And they really like Jonathan Abram, the former Raider that they picked up last offseason, that played pretty extensively down the stretch with May being out. Now Abram is a guy that you never, and I mean ever, want to see in coverage, at a coverage role of any kind. But he does allow the team some flexibility with their other safeties, because you can move Jonathan Abram down in the box. He's a physical player, good tackler, good instincts against the run. And just an experienced veteran, to add to the defense. It would not surprise me if the Saints brought in another veteran safety in free agency and or addressed it somehow in the draft, probably with a day 3 pick. But they feel pretty confident with Jordan Howden, and Tyrann Mathieu, at least for the time being. And like you said, it's not that May played extremely poorly. I think it's safe to say that he did not live up to the expectations, from the player that we saw, with the New York Jets, as far as being a ball hawking deep safety. But Marcus May played okay, in the 2 years that he was with them. But if you're only going to get a guy for half the season, then what the hell are you paying him for? And I think that's the bottom line, what it came down to, for the New Orleans Saints. They've restructured everybody else, not everybody else, but several other players. They just made the decision, and correct one in my opinion, to just move on from May. Take the small dead cap hit that they're going to take, and still save a handful of $1 million, as they work to get towards cap compliance before free agency.
Yeah, and I like what you said about where the Saints are at safety, bringing up yet again, it's an underrated need. And I think it's more of an underrated need just because of depth, right?
Yeah.
And youthfulness, right? With May and Tyrann Mathieu, not that Marcus May is near the age that Tyrann Mathieu is, but you felt that maybe a shot in the arm, little jolt of youth would be helpful. Got a little bit of that out of Howden. I still have my concerns. Like, Mathieu played well last year,
Mm-hmm.
And was more of that honey badger that we expected once he signed in New Orleans, right? He had that little learning curve, if you will, that first 8 weeks of season 1. But after that, he's played really good football. I don't have a concern with his play. I have a concern with the fact that time stops for no one. And this has been the case for the Saints at multiple positions, where it is still that window. We went from championship window to it's starting to close a little bit more, right? It's like you can still win some NFC Souths. You can still get to the playoffs. That window, they're still trying to keep that window open. And with doing that, they haven't invested a lot in like a youth movement.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying this has to be like the youngest team in football, but there is a lot of lack of depth because of keeping that window open, because of the cap hell that they find themselves in every offseason. because they don't have the money to spread around to bring in youthful talent, whether it be a guy that is coming off of his rookie deal, whether it be a veteran that's still, in their late 20s that's looking to revitalize their career or whatever. They haven't been able to do that. Still not going to be able to do that. But that's why I think safety is a little bit of an underrated need for the Saints. You're not going to go spend a first-round draft pick on a safety.
No.
You're going to spend a day 2 pick on a safety. But very similar to Jordan Howden, who was, a 5th-round pick, you could see something like that again in getting another versatile piece to the defensive backfield. I agree with what you said. I don't think it was so much his play. I think it was so much more his lack of ability to stay on the field. I mean, and think about it this way. He played, 16 games in New Orleans. That's not even a full season now. Like, it's not even a full regular season in 2 years. And for the type of money he was getting paid, if you guys remember that free agency class, it was Marcus Williams was the best available safety, and Marcus May was second, almost unanimously behind him. He never really lived up to that, but he played okay. Not bad to where people are cheering that he's gone. But that's where the Saints stand there. Bob, you have had to write a lot of articles over the last couple days, maybe longer than that, about cap and restructures specifically. I'm sure you have a nice little list in front of you of all the restructures that the Saints have made. But before we get into that, I want to answer Kenneth Banks' question. I'll throw it up on the screen. Kenneth said, I'm not really clear on how many draft picks the Saints actually have this year. And do you guys think they can or will move up to get a quarterback or another position? I like that he added another position. Because I think I could go on for the entire length of a show on why the Saints are not trading up for a quarterback. And I'm sure Bob and I will have our time and our moments as we inch closer and closer to April, where we will both go on our long tangents of whatever you feel about Derek Carr, he's not going anywhere. But I digress. Bob, for clarity, the Saints have how many picks this year? And is there a position that you think the Saints could target to move up from 14?
The Saints have the 14th overall pick in the first round. A second-round pick, 45th overall. Fourth, fifth, and sixth round picks. That's what they're allotted. They are also now the official picks have not compensatory picks have not yet been awarded, but New Orleans is expected to get 3 of those. All 3 will be on day 3, and all 3 are expected to be in either the 5th or the 6th round, if that helps you a little bit. So there's a partly an answer to your question that doesn't give the Saints a whole lot of ammunition to move up in the draft to get anybody. And remember, to move up in the draft, you need the ammunition to do so. I do expect this team to be highly active. On draft days, through the draft weekend trade wise, because they always are. But we should expect this team to package a few of those day 3 picks to move up into, say, the 4th round, or maybe sneak into the 3rd round into late day 2. That's the kind of activity I expect to see from New Orleans this year. Does that mean that they won't move up in the 1st round or even the 2nd round, to get a specific player that they target? No, it doesn't mean that they won't or can't. It just means that they don't have a lot of ammunition to do so. So a drastic move, I think, is almost certainly out of the question. And Kenneth, the last part of your question, a quarterback. I'm never going to say 100%, but I'm going to put this one at 99.5% that the Saints will not draft a quarterback in the 1st round. Brendan and I have said it really since midseason. As soon as the Saints made their decision to bring back Dennis Allen this year, that cemented their decision to also bring back Derek Carr as their starting quarterback. The 2 of them are tied at the hip. It's as simple as that. It doesn't mean that the Saints won't draft a quarterback, and I'm not saying that the Saints shouldn't draft a quarterback, but I'm telling you they won't, because as Brendan just said, this team still views themselves at least as a playoff contender. When you view yourself that way, and you have who you feel is your quarterback in Derek Carr, then you need to use those early picks to address other needs. Offensive line, edge rusher, seem to be the consensus, top two needs for this team, but also, safety, a big body pass catcher, whether it's wide out, tight end, and linebacker. These are other glaring needs for this team. And in my opinion, not, plus when you add in the fact that they just that Derek Carr was just one of their contract restructures, to push more of his contract money back into the latter stages of his contract, over the next 2 or 3 years, then that really goes in, and from my view, from 99.5% that the Saints won't draft a quarterback in the first or probably second round to about 99.9%. Again, I'm not saying that they shouldn't. I'm just telling you why they won't.
99.9 repeating is where I'm at in terms of the Saints taking a quarterback on day 1 or day 2. You can never rule out, especially with some of the picks they may be given. Like you said, they haven't been announced officially yet. I mean, the Saints are known. I mean, that would be a fun game. Could you name the random Saints quarterbacks they've drafted since 2006? I mean, you got like Tyler Palco. He might have been undrafted. Or was Palco?
He was undrafted, yeah.
So Palco came in, and then you had Sean Canfield came in. I'm going out of order here, but like Chase Daniel was an undrafted. Like you can go on and on with backup quarterbacks, or at least guys the Saints brought in that were not the day 1 or day 2. But the only day 2 quarterback the Saints had ever drafted, from Archie Manning, wasn't that it? Archie Manning to Garrett Grayson, like that's how long it took the Saints, and then Haener was a 4th round pick.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the only 2 quarterbacks that the Saints have taken on day 1 or day 2 of the draft ever. So if that tells you anything as well, yes, you were blessed with Drew Brees for a long time, but that still doesn't erase the other 2 decades they didn't draft a quarterback. So it's not going to happen. The restructuring of Carr's contract, I know it doesn't make it impossible to move on from Carr by any means, but the more you restructure contracts, it becomes more difficult to move on from contracts. The Saints wouldn't have paid Derek Carr $150 million if they were going to dump him after a year or 2. Those are the facts, right? And I know people don't like to hear this, and Bob and I have said it a lot over the last couple months, I guess, is Derek didn't really play that poorly over the back half of the season, right? Like, I'm not saying he was great. Certainly better than he was the first half of the season. The stats are there to back it up.
Mm-hmm.
And you saw he was getting more comfortable. Now, some of that stuff changes because now you're learning a new offense, and there's going to be a learning curve there, and you might experience some of the same frustrations with Carr from the beginning. But as Bob and I talked about last week, the Kubiak system, in theory or on paper, as we like to say on this show, should make Carr's life a lot easier. It is a very quarterback-friendly system.
Yep.
So those are the things that I look at should the Saints draft a quarterback? Well, remember, we never saw Jake Haener, and he was suspended for the first 6 weeks of the season last year. There's a good chance Haener's your backup quarterback, or the more likely thing, the Saints drafting a quarterback, Saints going and getting a veteran quarterback to be the backup, and Haener is the quarterback 3. The emergency quarterback 3 throughout year 2. And then after that, the Saints have 2 years of Jake Haener in camp and everything to decide whether or not they want to move forward with Jake Haener. Really easy to move on from a 4th round draft pick, right? But that's the more likely thing. The Saints go get some veteran quarterback that probably has some tie to Dennis Allen or some tie to the Kubiaks or the Shanahans of the world, right? That I could see. And honestly, off the top of my head, I can't think of somebody. But
Sam Darnold.
that's okay. Yeah, he was just there in San Francisco. Like that makes sense.
The idea makes me physically nauseous, but I'm telling everybody, watch for Sam Darnold to be signed by the New Orleans Saints.
I'll give you one that's going to make you more nauseous. What if the Saints trade a 6th-round pick to the New York Jets?
Yeah.
Zach Wilson. I told you.
You're right. You're right. That does make me more nauseous.
Or
Yeah, but listen, that doesn't mean. I mean, we just gave you the rundown of how many picks the Saints are going to have on day 3. They might feel if a quarterback that they really like, that Clint Kubiak really likes for his system, Michael Pratt, which I know most New Orleans fans would love this. Joe Milton from Tennessee. Jordan Travis, who was having a marvelous season at Florida State before he wrecked it, before he had that gruesome injury. Travis, was probably facing a redshirt, injury redshirt year. So I expect him, to slip into day 3. Maybe they see a skill set that they like on paper. Because remember, to tie along with what Brendan said, you look at the quarterbacks that have had success with Clint Kubiak, Gary Kubiak, Kyle Shanahan, Mike Shanahan, that Kubiak Shanahan system. Brock Purdy, 7th-round pick, Mr. Irrelevant, literally the last pick of the draft. Kirk Cousins had his best statistical year with Clint Kubiak. Jimmy Garoppolo played very, very well in the Kyle Shanahan system. And you reach back for looking at Gary Kubiak, Clint's father, or Mike Shanahan, Kyle's father. Their system has made quarterbacks like Matt Schaub in Houston, Jake Plummer in Denver, quarterbacks like that. Have snuck into have had Pro Bowl caliber seasons. Again, with Kubiak, more so than maybe many other offensive coordinators. Yeah, I'm big time into the idea that you need a franchise signal caller, but this system can produce a good offense without a franchise, an elite quarterback. You just need a capable quarterback, a guy that can process quickly, and a high football IQ guy, to operate this offense. Is Jake Haener that guy long term? At least by again, let's assume that Derek Carr is going to be the quarterback for the next 2 years. Is Jake Haener the guy that they feel comfortable backing him up? I don't know. To me, that's one of the bigger questions for this team going into this offseason. I just gave you a couple names of quarterbacks that I like, potentially in day 3 of the draft. But I'm with you, Brandon. I still expect them to go out and sign a veteran with some starting experience, and it will probably be a guy that's had experience either with Kubiak himself, or a guy that's had some experience in this type of system.
I agree. There's still a couple young quarterbacks out there that I would love to see the Saints take a flyer on as a backup quarterback. And what I mean by that is just guys that have not panned out where they were. I'm not talking necessarily Zach Wilson, because that's a whole different category. But guys like Malik Wills down in Tennessee, who was a 3rd-round draft pick that didn't work out. I would love to see the Saints take a risk and get a guy like that. Or, Trey Lance is a good example, who was traded to the Cowboys, a guy who had a lot of upside in the draft and just it didn't work out where it was. I would love to see them grab a guy like that and maybe develop under, but it looks like that's what they're doing with Jake Haener. So, to your point, Bob, it makes a lot of more sense for the Saints to go get a guy that is familiar with this system. And that's going to help Derek Carr throughout the process as well. And a veteran guy, other than Derek Carr, for a guy like Jake Haener. All those things extremely valuable. I mean, I hate doing this, so I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'm going to look at 09, right? You had Drew Brees, Mark Brunell at the very end of his career, but a veteran guy, a leader, a guy who had been to Pro Bowls, a guy who had played playoff games. And then you had a very young Chase Daniels, the 3rd quarterback. I mean, if you follow that mold, not just championship football teams, but other teams that follow that mold, it typically works out for you. You have a good quarterback room. You have a high level IQ in the quarterback room, and especially in a first year offense like the Saints are going to have, I think that is key and that is crucial. Kenneth follows up that question: what qualifies the Saints as a playoff team? I'm going to keep this one super short, Bob. You ready? Because the NFC South sucks. We good?
Yeah, I mean, at least on paper, it certainly still does, Kenneth. And what qualifies the Saints as a playoff team? The Saints believe that they are yeah, and that's why they are making the moves that they are making, is because they still feel that playoff, well, maybe not championship window, but that playoff window is open. So as long as they feel that way, then they're going to make the moves that correspond that feeling, that inkling, regardless of whether we agree with it or not.
And like I said, they've tried to keep that window open for a
Mm-hmm.
long time.
And competitive teams should. If you feel that you're competitive, then you should make those moves. And if you feel you're competitive but are not, then it's the ownership's job to step in and get rid of the people who have those incorrect feelings. They haven't done so. Dennis Allen's still there. Mickey Loomis ain't going anywhere ever. The defensive coaches are still there. So, obviously that's a feeling that permeates all the way to the top of the organization, that they still feel they are good enough to at least make the playoffs.
Well, and listen, in all honesty, the last 2 years, 3 years if you want to, the ball bounces your way once in one game and you're in the playoffs.
Sure.
Last year, I mean, I hate it's not just Blake Groupies, but this is the one game that comes to mind is the game in Green Bay, right? That doesn't come down to a groupie kick. They were up 17-0. If New Orleans wins that game, you're in the playoffs. So obviously they have some belief. I'm not the type of guy that says like just strip it down, like blow it up. I'm not at that point with this team by any means, and I don't think anybody should be at that point with this team. But this upcoming season, especially with some of the restructures that just happened, we still need to get into all those restructures. But some of those restructures that happen, the age of some of these guys, specifically DeMario, specifically Cam, if this upcoming season doesn't result in a playoff appearance, I think you do hit a crossroads.
Yeah.
And you do have to have a serious conversation on where are we going with this football team. And I've said this for, God, how long have I been associated in one way or another with Saints News? Since 15. So I've been saying this for almost a decade now. That's crazy to say out loud. But for almost a decade, I've said at some point, you have to pay the piper. And what I mean by that is at some point, the Saints are not going to sit there and restructure every dang contract they've ever signed. At some point, the Saints are going to have to blow it up and pay the taxes, like whatever metaphor, whatever saying you want to use there. At some point, the Saints aren't going to be a team that restructures because they're competitive. They're going to restructure because they have to, and they're going to let a lot more guys walk than they do restructure. And again, I think that if this upcoming season does not result in success, you hit that crossroads. But we have plenty of time to talk about that because, shoot, we're not even at the NFL draft yet. So before we continue with draft questions, we're looking ahead to next year. Bob, like I said, you're going to get the solo cam. You're going to have your moment in the spotlight. It is, I don't even have a clever name for this. It is salary cap fun with Bob. Fridays at 9 o'clock, or whatever. But Bob, the Saints have had a lot of restructures over the last week, 2 weeks. What can you tell the people about all that to get them all caught up on all the moves that have happened?
Well, first of all, the best possible news, came when the NFL officially announced their salary cap, figure for each NFL team for this season, and it was about $20 million higher than what anybody, media or teams had projected it to be. So automatically, right there, that's good news coming out of the gate. And unless you've been under a rock or you just realized that the New Orleans Saints are an NFL team this year, you had to know that there was going to be a bunch of restructures coming. And so far, that's exactly what the Saints have done. We already mentioned the quarterback Derek Carr has been restructured. In addition to that, center Eric McCoy, guard Cesar Ruiz have also agreed to restructure deals. On defense, Brendan mentioned defensive end Cam Jordan. No surprise there. Cam has always been a team first guy. He accepts yet another. I think this is the sixth time. That Cam Jordan has agreed to restructure whatever current deal he's on. And along with Cam, defensive end Carl Granderson and defensive tackle Nathan Shepard have also agreed to restructure deals. Demario Davis, he's another guy that's restructured couple or three times. That hasn't become official yet, but we expect Demario to restructure his deal and push some of his money back. And then as we talked about at the opening of the show, safety Marcus May, has been told that he will be released, by the team, and free to negotiate a free agent contract with any other NFL team, when the new year officially starts on March 13th. With all that said, for all the naysayers and doomsayers that were saying, "Oh, the Saints are 80-something million over the cap," those of us, Brendan, myself, several others that have either been covering the team or if you've been following the team, you just roll your eyes at that number, because after all the restructures that I just mentioned, the Saints are sitting now, at approximately $14 million over the salary cap, and that's not counting what's going to come off the books, once May gets officially released. So with a handful of restructures to go, the Saints are going to easily be cap compliant and have the ability to sign at least a couple mid-tier free agents by that March 13th free agency deadline. And that they're going to be able to do it without really cutting anybody that they didn't want to or were willing to lose. You look around the league, Miami Dolphins, they're going to cut at least 3 defensive starters that I know of. The Buffalo Bills are going to have to make some tough roster decisions. The Saints, they don't do business that way. They restructure, they kick the can down the road. They use their paycheck to pay off their credit card bills, and then go back to work and maxing those credit cards. Whatever analogy you want to put on it, that's the way the Saints do business. And that's as long as this regime is in place and it ain't going anywhere. It's going to be the way they continue to do business.
And I think the biggest thing when it comes to the restructures year in and year out is I don't think people fully understand what the restructuring process is. Like, you remember a couple years ago, might be more than a couple now, when Taysom Hill signed like this massive extension for $100+ million, but it was really like voidable years. That's the way the Saints operate. It is stuff that does not make sense to you, to me, to Bob. Like, we don't know how it works, but there are some analytical masterminds, whether it's Harley or whether it's part of Harley's team that's just sitting there on a computer all day. Just, how can we manipulate this? How can we manipulate this? How can we do this? If we do this to Cam Jordan's contract, it's math beyond me, because I got a D in math in college. But you know what they say, Bob? D's get degrees. That's what happened for me, at least in that class. But that's how the Saints operate. That's how they're always going to operate. And see, Anna said, I want to know why people are so upset about Cam Jordan's restructure. I haven't seen a whole lot of people be upset about it.
She's right. There are, on social media, more on Facebook than Twitter. Imagine that. The dysfunctional world of Facebook. This is just a case of what have you done for me lately? And a lot of people they want Cam gone because he only had 2 sacks last year. They want Derek Carr gone because they hate Derek Carr, and he didn't play well most of last year. They want, Demario Davis gone because Demario had 5 less tackles last year than what he did the previous couple of years, and he's older too. Most of the people that are upset with it are people that are living in a Madden video game world and just think that you could take this name and plug it in this position and turn your salary cap settings off, and away you go. Cam, first of all, Cam's deal saved $9 million towards the salary cap. And, this team is already going to be paying Cam Jordan, just as they are Drew Brees, after that man has retired. At this stage, I think Cam restructuring his deal is also Cam saying, I want to retire as a New Orleans Saint. Well, Cam Jordan is one of the greatest players in franchise history, and you could make a strong argument that he is the greatest defensive player. He's top 3 on that side of the ball, in my opinion, but I'd definitely be willing to hear you out if you came to me and said, Bob, Cam Jordan is the greatest New Orleans Saint defensive player ever. He's in the conversation. Therefore, this man has earned the right to retire as a New Orleans Saint, and I think it's the loyalty of the organization, in letting him do so, setting it up for him to do so, and it's the loyalty of Cam to the organization, saying, you know what, I am willing. Nobody's taking a pay cut here. You're just deferring some of the money. And in doing so, you save this team $9 million for Cam to hopefully get a chance to make us another Super Bowl run. That's just, I don't understand why people are so upset about it either. They want to cut everybody and think that they have 5 first-round draft choices coming and that they're going to be able to sign these $20 and $30 million free agents. That's not the reality of the world. You got to shuffle. For the most part, you got to shuffle whatever cards you have in your hand. And you can't plot down and say, "Give me 5 new ones," because that strategy usually doesn't work either. You shuffle around, you keep the high cards that you have, and you ask the dealer, I'll take 1 and I'll take 2. That's pretty much where the Saints, and frankly, most NFL teams are year after year.
You mean to tell me that I can't just turn off sliders in real life? What? I can't have like no cap. I can't have computer accepts every trade. Like, I can't do that? What are you talking about, Bob? I can't force free agents to sign with me by hitting a button?
Right.
You blew my mind.
I'm sorry to tell you.
I thought that's how the world worked. I thought that I could turn off sliders and my boss would start paying me $100 million a year. Like, I am mind blown. I'm just kidding. But, I mean, what you said is right. It boils down to people going, what has this guy done for me lately? And I mean, shoot, like, I understand that saying when it's been a couple years.
Yeah.
But look, Cam, that was what, like the longest streak? Was it the longest streak in NFL history? His sack streak, like consecutive seasons with 7 sacks or more. It had to be up there if it wasn't.
It was up there.
Like, that's nothing to bat an eye at. He set the franchise record for sacks. That's nothing to bat an eye at. Like, looking at his sack numbers versus Hall of Famer sack numbers, like, he's getting in the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it either. Like, he did the Saints a solid. And he's one of the greatest players in the history of the franchise. And you could make the argument. Actually, you don't even have to make the argument because he made the all-decade team, right? Like, there's no argument. He's one of the best. He's one of the best defensive players of the last decade. I don't get it.
Yeah, only Von Miller has more sacks than Cam Jordan does among active players. And I mean, those numbers, the career sack marks, I realize that has more to do with longevity than it does current ability. And even the most ardent and strong Cam Jordan supporters, and I'm among those people, have to acknowledge that, Cam is clearly not the player he once was. But A, by his own admission, he was dealing with some injuries last year. B, and this is just my own contention, Cam is no longer an every down player. I still believe Cam can be a 6 or 8 sack a year guy, and a big clutch performer if you limit his snaps, make him a situational player, in most games, and just pick and choose your moments when to use him. And I think he'd be a stronger player for it down the stretch of the year. Certainly be a stronger player for it late in games. But unfortunately, due to bad drafting, and that's all there is to it. Bad drafting. Marcus Davenport didn't work out. Peyton Turner hasn't worked out. Isaiah Foskey, it's too early for me to say that he hasn't worked out, but he certainly was a non-factor his rookie year. Those are 3 defensive ends that you invested 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick in. When those don't work out, you are then stuck hoping and trying to milk as much as you can out of a 34-year-old defensive end, who not only just doesn't miss games, he doesn't miss snaps. Most of his career, he's upward and around 80 and 85% of defensive snaps played. That's a ton of wear and tear. And at this point in his career, the Saints need to do themselves, along with Cam Jordan, a favor in making him a situational player. But you can only do that if you have capable players on that depth chart, capable of making plays on first and second down, or capable of making plays when you have 94 sitting on the bench. And for the last, really Cam Jordan's entire career, they haven't had those.
Only correction I want to make, I don't get to do this often, so this is fun. 3 first-round picks and 1 second-round pick on those players.
Because you're right.
Sorry, I had to.
No, you're right.
2 firsts. I had to throw 2 firsts under the bus, as the Twitterverse like to call them.
And by the way, speaking of moves that would make you nauseous, Mr. Davenport's going to be a free agent this year. Maybe the Saints visit that poisonous snake again.
I wouldn't put it past them.
No, I wouldn't either.
The Saints have a weird history of bringing guys back, or at least giving them a shot. Right, at least bring them or something. So, hey, he hasn't been in the chat yet. Your buddy John Butler, didn't he say it like last week? Like the first move for Kubiak's going to be Traquan
Smith.
Like, I mean, I wouldn't put it past him for that either, at all. Actually, I actually think the Saints have a pretty decent receiving this year. If they add one more decent, I know you throw KJ Osborne out every week, but if they add one more decent receiver, I think they're going to be in pretty good shape at that spot. I'll tell you what. This fan base, and this is going back to the Cameron Jordan talk, I just have to get this off my chest. And you and I have kind of talked about this a little bit, and it's weird because you have Saints fans like you and our friend Alan Ulrich, who have seen the darkest of days for this franchise. And then you have people like me who, yes, like I remember the Ricky Williams. I remember the Aaron Brooks. Aaron Brooks gets too much hate. I've always said that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, my time as a fan of this team than my time as an analyst, writer, reporter, podcast host, whatever, I'm used to seeing this team win. So it's weird for me to say this out loud, but like the fan base is spoiled. And you're going to have people of your generation that go, absolutely not. Like we have been through hell and back. Right. And then you're going to have people in my generation and past, they're going to say, absolutely. Like we've only seen this team win. But when it goes to the Cameron Jordan things, the expectation levels, because of how successful the Saints were for 15 years, is unfair for not just the team, but individuals as well. Like, I was the first to come on here and be critical of Derek Carr from last season.
Mm-hmm.
But I also realized that coming from Vegas, it's only fitting to say this, for Derek, is like he got dealt an unfair hand coming to New Orleans. I think the expectation level, regardless of how well or poorly he played, was extremely high.
Yeah.
And it's nearly impossible, even if he threw for 4,500 yards and 40 touchdowns. Like, I still think there would have been people out there that were like, no, but he's not Drew. And that's where we are. You know, DJ said he was there when the brown bags came out. Like, yeah, like that. Those generational people are going to say, no, we're not a spoiled fan base. Where
Sure.
I'm going to be the first one to say, yes, you are a spoiled fan base, because you have these seasons of finishing around 500, and you're going, oh my god, the sky is falling, and it's like, man, people my age don't know the Billy Joe years, right? People my age don't know didn't live through Archie Manning running for his life for 10 years. Like, we don't know that. We know a team that was averaging 30 plus points a game as an offense. We know a defense that was opportunistic, and honestly was never like a great defense, but was an opportunistic defense. The years that the Saints were good, we knew an offense that revolved around pass catching running backs, and that's something that we haven't seen in the last few years out of New Orleans, is using those guys correctly. Like, the list goes on and on and on. But to sit there and be upset that, oh my god, Cameron Jordan's going to be around even longer, you're spoiled. Like, if you have that mindset, I don't care if you're in Bob's generation, my generation, older generation, younger generation. If that is your mindset, you're spoiled. That's what it is. Fredo says the O-line was horrible. Joe Montana could not have looked good behind them. Going back to talking about Archie, I mean, that's always the argument for Archie, right? Was like, what would have the career trajectory of Archie Manning been if he had half of an offense? You know?
He did have half an offense. It just the offense that he had was all at the skill positions. I mean, that team had Wes Chandler, Ike Harris. People forget how good Ike Harris was. At wide out, Henry Childs at tight end, Chuck Muncie, Tony Galbraith in the backfield. They had an offensive line, that couldn't block a stiff breeze. So you never knew how good Archie Manning could have been. And that's usually the way I put it with Archie. I'm not one of those players that are one of those people that say, oh, he could have been a Pro Bowler, he could have been a Hall of Fame. You don't know. I was little, but I do remember, watching those Saints play. I remember very specifically, the Raiders Saints game on Monday Night Football, where the Saints were ahead of them by 3 scores in the third quarter at home, and ended up losing that game. I remember Joe Montana's first real epic comeback as an NFL quarterback was in Candlestick Park against the New Orleans Saints. I believe it was 35-7. The Saints were ahead and lost 38-35. So I do remember those kind of performances. But I'm not going to be one of those ones that say Archie Manning could have been this or could have been that. I would just say that you don't know how good Archie Manning could have been, because they didn't have an offensive line to protect him. Their defense couldn't stop anybody most years. Then by contrast, you had in the late 90s, you had an offense that was epically bad. The Billy Joe horrors, Danny Werfel, Heath Schuler, but a defense that was pretty damn good. And a defense that when Jim Haslett took over in 2000, Jim really didn't have to add many defensive pieces, because a top tier defense was already in place. He brought in guys like Joe Horn, drafted Deuce McAllister, brought in Aaron Brooks. I believe he's the one that drafted Dante Stallworth too. So he had to put. So it was the opposite effect. With that. And again, most people, as you point out, most people's idea now of the dark days, and I'm dealing with social media, which is for the most part, a younger generation's platform. Most of that platform's idea of the dark days are 3 straight 7-9 seasons under Sean Payton. That's a mic drop right there. Yeah, I mean, even Katrina, the Katrina year, and that 3-13 season is usually kind of talked about with an unspoken asterisk, because of just the horrific things that were going on in New Orleans and the entire Gulf Coast region. That football team is largely forgiven for that. But even that, you're going back like 19 years, since Katrina. So that's, again, social media, Twitter, Facebook, whatever else, it's more or less a young person's platform. So it's difficult to have these generational arguments with people.
Fredosa hated Brooks. I don't understand. That's fine, and I can understand why. Like he was like the definition of a. I don't even know. I guess, yeah. Like he was one of those gunslinger guys where like you loved him one moment and you were like, "What the hell was that?" the next. But I think he gets overly hated by this fan base. Like Bob said, the 05 team has to have an asterisk next to him. I don't care. I don't care what team played that year, with all the factors going on between what was actually going on in New Orleans with Katrina, families having to play a home game in Giant Stadium, like all of that. I don't care what football team it was; they were not going to be successful. And I know Brooks was his last year as the starter, but I thought he was fun. I thought he brought a different energy to the team. You could make the argument he's the second greatest quarterback in franchise history. You could certainly make the argument. I just don't understand why he gets as much hate from the fan base as he does. Because there are other quarterbacks that have played for this football team that are a lot easier to hate, or not have liked their performance or whatever than Aaron Brooks. That's where I stand on that. Last minute or two of the show, Bob, let's bring back a daughter drop. We haven't done that in a while, so we'll do some daughter drops as we continue through cap cutting, guys getting released, restructures. So daughter drop, Bob. The Saints will cut another starter before free agency starts.
Let me marinate on this a second.
Make sure you're not forgetting of someone. Yeah.
Right. Drop. Because, and we don't really have enough. Realistically, we don't really have enough time left to go through the projected starters. I can't see them cutting anybody. I know Marshawn Lattimore has been the subject of trade rumors. I still, for one, don't believe that that's ultimately going to happen. But they're certainly not going to cut Marshawn. Can you see them cutting a guy like Foster Moreau, who started a handful of games? Ryan Ramczyk. Andrus Peat is a free agent, so that's not an option to cut him. They're obviously not going to cut or trade an Alvin Kamara or Chris Olave. So I have some questions about Andrus Peat and some other pending free agents about who they're gonna really make a hard push to get back. But I don't believe that they're going to cut any significant contributor.
I'm with you on that.
Daughter drop, and I wish we had a chance. We'll have next week too. I wish we had a chance to delve more into free agency tonight. Daughter drop. Your opinion. Edge rusher is actually a bigger need for this team than offensive tackle.
It's tough. And it's tough because of the same argument I made about safety at the beginning. And that is that there is no depth in youth movement. Yeah, you could say Foskey. Yeah, you could still have hope for Peyton Turner. And I think I've kind of said this before, is what the Saints do in free agency at that position directly affects how they feel about those two guys. but I'm going to drop it because of this. If you lose Andrus Pete, what kind of position are you in at tackle? You're starting Trevor Penning, who I still have hope for Trevor Penning.
Sure.
He's a decent player.
And they do too.
It's a confidence thing, I think, more than anything. And he got behind the 8 ball with injuries and stuff early on. But then, while you have reports coming out this week that the Saints are hopeful of Ryan Ramczyk, that's scary too, because I can be hopeful about a lot of things. I can be hopeful that I win the lottery this week. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. And all of a sudden, one of the more shored up positions on your team, you got to have like an insurance policy on. And I don't see the Saints having an insurance policy on this roster. So I'm going to drop. I still think offensive tackle is the more important get. I would even make the argument that offensive guard is the more important get. But I don't know now because, you restructure Cesar Ruiz. So it's like, draft left tackle. I don't know. Or left guard. I don't know. All right. Last one for you. We kind of talked about it. And you threw out the name Sam Darnold, but I want to kind of expand on that. Is dot or drop the Saints bring in a quarterback that never played in the Kubiak or Shanahan system to be Carr's backup next year? Didn't see that one coming, did you?
I didn't. I'm going to dot that only as a possibility. Because I do believe that they'll bring in a veteran. My money, for the reasons that I mentioned earlier, again, as much as it makes me physically nauseous, my money's on Sam Darnold. But if they can't get him, or if they're wrong, I can see them bringing in a guy. That hasn't necessarily played for a Canahan, as we'll call it from now on, a Canahan, offense, but has that skill set that they like. Gardner Minshew's a free agent. Mason Rudolph, Carson Wentz, Tyrod Taylor, Drew Lock. Actually, Drew Lock did play for Kubiak in Denver, I believe, But yeah, I mean, I'll dot that as a possibility. I think ultimately they'll try to get a guy that Kubiak has at least some familiar traits with. But if not, at the end of the day, I still strongly believe that they bring in a veteran with some starting experience. So yeah, I'll dot it as a possibility.
I really hated that list of quarterbacks you just listed.
Right.
There was only about one that I got excited about. At this point, it's great. I love Tyrod Taylor. I think that he's one of the more underrated borderline starters, but at this point in his career, I don't know if I want Tyrod Taylor. I love Gardner Minshew.
Same.
I think he got a raw end of the deal in Jacksonville. I've said that on this show multiple times, but I still think Gardner Minshew could sign for it. Kind of like Jameis. Like, I think those guys are kind of in these spots where it's like, do I go get the bag to be a top tier backup, or do I go somewhere where I can compete to be the starter?
Right.
And they're right there teetering at it. So that's going to be interesting to see how that pans out.
Yeah, and by the way, I would prefer Jameis Winston over every single guy that I listed there as potential. But we know, I think it's a pretty safe bet that Jameis Winston is not going to be welcome back in New Orleans, by Dennis Allen and company next year. I think that goes without saying.
Absolutely.
Dot or drop. The Saints should make targeting a linebacker one of their top priorities entering free agency. I got a few names for you if it helps your dot or drop.
Let me see it. Know what you got.
Okay. I mean, Levante David, if you're going to stretch, I can't see the money for that. But yeah, I mean, realistically, Willie Gay of the Chiefs, Josie Jewell of the Broncos, Jordan Hicks of the Vikings, Anthony Walker Jr. of the Browns. Those are just a few of the off-ball linebackers that will be available in free agency.
Prioritize is a very strong word. When I think prioritize, it's like one of your top 2, 3 positions you're going after. I will dot it. It's hard, it's borderline, but I will dot it because I think you can get a more quality off-ball linebacker in free agency than you can the draft, particularly with where the Saints are picking and needs, right? Like, I don't see the Saints using a first or second round pick on a linebacker, but I could see them going and getting a guy like you threw Hicks's name out there in Minnesota. Like, I could see the Saints going after a guy like that who's going to provide depth, a little bit of an insurance policy, because we've seen Warner go down a few times during the Saints' career. So yeah, I'll dot that. That was a tough one. That was a tough one, but after sitting and thinking, like I said, those first 2 picks, you're looking at O-line may be the first 2 picks, with this team.
Maybe.
No. But linebacker, just I think the Saints would rather have a veteran guy. That is something that scares me though too. I know DeMario still wants to play another like 3+ years, but not really having a guy in the wings there is also really scary. So I like it. Well, guys, we appreciate you guys bearing with us with the scheduling conflicts and illness and all the Heisenberg whatever on that side and the TSA horror story on. It really wasn't TSA's fault. It was just I think they said it was computers like in the plane, and the plane coming in.
Yeah, it was computers.
Yeah, totally computers. The flight coming in was late, so that already delayed us. And then we get on the plane, sit on the plane for about 30 minutes going, what's going on? And then over the intercom, we're having issues with our computers. You're like, okay, well, can I get off the plane? Like,
right. And airport delays, tick me off, just as much as the next person. But at the end of the day, and this is what I usually keep telling myself, I'm like, you know what? I don't want to be in the air if my plane isn't 110% operable. So you do whatever you need to do to make sure that I get from A to B completely intact.
Yeah, exactly. It's annoying at the time, but you're absolutely right. You're like, you know what? In hindsight, I will sit here and wait as long as you need me to wait to make sure that this thing is going. But yeah, we appreciate you guys bearing with us. Bob, like I said, you've been busy. You've been busy with those restructure pieces, those restructure articles. It's not going to end. The Saints still got $14 million to free up.
Yep.
And then some, because you got to have cap room to sign new guys. So more and more are coming. Where can people follow you and your work as you cover that and all of the Saints news throughout the offseason?
Yeah, folks, and remember the scouting combine is this weekend. So we're gonna. I already have draft profiles ready to go. I've just been too sick, too under the weather, and too busy with other stuff to start writing them. Free agency previews are coming up. I have individual individual players to look at, positions to prioritize, things like that. So those are the kind of things I'm going to be writing about over the next week or two. And you can follow me while I do that. Bob Rose on Facebook, at BobbyR2613 on Twitter, and obviously myself, Ross Jackson, John Hendricks, and Kyle Mosley at the Saints News Network, where all of us publish all of our pieces. And check out Ross and John. John Hendricks and Ross Jackson, they have a brand new podcast out. They're running like us once a week. I believe they're doing it on Sundays, but check out their social media pages for sure. And I retweet whenever they do a show promo too. So check them out. And don't forget, guys, our numbers at the Bayou Blitz Facebook page and Bayou Blitz Twitter page, they've been a little bit quiet recently. We're not losing anybody. You guys are still going with us strong, but we need your help to bring in more Saints fans, especially to spark up conversations with free agency coming up. the draft right around the corner, and things like that. And Brennan and I, as we always do, we're going to be live with you all 3 days of the draft, and we want to make sure that we stream it through the Bayou Blitz Facebook page, so y'all got to bring in as many Saints fans as you can, to help us get those numbers boosted up.
And for myself, you can follow me on virtually everything at BT Boylan. Yeah, the draft's right around the corner. Made up words are going to get counted again. Different things that I say, different things Bob say. How many cups of coffee? I think we copped that last year. How many pots or how many cups between the two of us we drank? So we'll have to keep track of all that fun stuff. It is one of our favorite times of the year.
Yeah.
Because we are together nonstop for like 3 consecutive days. And same with you. Like we love hanging out with you guys for 3 days. Like it's fun. Overreaction and draft picks are the beauty of all of it because you're really right or really wrong. There's really no in between. You either nail it or your analysis was like, which for Bob you've actually been really good over the years.
Thank you.
And one of my proudest moments was the Olave Penning first round because we both had that in mocks that year on the Saints News Network. So to be able to, for both of us to get that especially was awesome. I think you ended up hitting on was it like 5 of the picks that year or 4 of the picks that year? Like you didn't have them all in the right rounds, but you would hit on most of that draft class.
You mean last year? Yeah, last year I had Brissy, but a lot of people did. But I also had him drafting Foskey, and I had him drafting A.T. Perry, and I had him drafting Nick Saldivari. And for a kid from Old Dominion, I'm pretty proud of myself for that one. And I mentioned a quarterback in day 3, and I Hainer. I didn't mention Hainer specifically, other than the fact that he was one of 3 names that I was watching. So. Either I should be very proud of myself for having pretty much nailed that draft last year, or considering the draft actually did very little for the Saints. Maybe I should be a little bit down on myself. I don't know which direction to go.
I think the more fun thing would be bring Lauren in and ask, "Hey, Lauren, how does this help? Does the draft help your mental state? Because Bob is so preoccupied, or does it hurt your mental state because Bob is so preoccupied?"
She often says, when her and I first got involved, and I told her what I did, and as my role grew, and I took a step away from retail sales, retail management, and stuff like that, as my role in this grew, she eventually said, I thought I would see you very little during the football season. As it turns out, I don't see you at all between like February and the end of May. So when when the NFL schedule comes out, that pretty much means that we're wrapped up with the draft coverage and our post-draft coverage and stuff like that. She then knows that she has 2 or 3 months. We still work, as and as you followers of us know. But she's like, I get my husband back until at least the football season, but I won't lose him completely until February.
That's accurate. It is accurate. At least she knows. She knows.
She does.
She knows what she got herself into. Well, guys, that's all the time we have for this week. We will be back likely Thursday. We'll have to officially make that official, but probably Thursday next week. As I'm on the road yet again. The world tour continues, as we like to say. So with that, we appreciate it. Follow Bob, all the guys over at the Saints News Network. Thanks so much for all of your love and support of the Bayou Blitz. Until next Thursday, hope you guys find some peace, spread love, practice positivity. Who dat?